All right. Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock, so I'd like to call this committee of the whole meeting for May 11th, 2021 to order. Can I get a motion that the agenda for the May 11th, 2021 committee of the whole meeting be adopted as presented? Councillor Schnard makes that motion. Any comments or concerns? All in favor? Motion passed. Can I get a motion that the minutes of the April 27th, 2021 committee of the whole meeting be adopted as presented? Councillor Wilkinson makes that motion. Any concerns? All right, I call the vote. All in favor? Passed. Next up, we have a delegation from Stantec Engineering on our road assessment report. Welcome, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Councillor Sorensen. So tonight we have Carlos Leal from Stantec here to present. Carlos is the infrastructure management and pavement engineering lead from Stantec. So as a little bit of background, in 2020, we engaged Stantec for a comprehensive assessment on our existing roads. That assessment included deflection testing, ultrasonic testing, and ride quality measurements along almost all of the roads in town. It excluded the highway portion. So they are able to use that information and run it through an assessment program that we'll be able to use in future years for our AMP for decision making. It's a pretty powerful tool that lets us adjust budgets and levels of service in town. So I'd like to let Carlos kind of talk about what the findings had and where we're going with that. So Carlos, if you're there, can you turn on your camera? And Steve, if it's possible, can we get Carlos to share his screen?
He should have access to that.
Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Pat, for the introduction. Yes, so good evening, everyone. I'm going to present on Stantec's road pavement and structure assessment project that we did for the town. So we'll start off by just summarizing the scope of the project. It did involve the entire 97 centerline kilometer length that the town manages on all 4 functional classifications of roads. And it involved 2 different assessment types, a functional assessment and a structural assessment. The functional assessment was completed via a surface distress and roadway profile survey. So the surface distress survey captures the physical defects of the pavements, and the roadway profile survey captures the ride quality and the wheel path depressions, also known as rutting. On the structural side of things, we completed some falling weight deflectometer testing to assess the structural adequacy of the pavement structures on the roads. We completed a ground penetrating radar survey to determine the pavement layer thicknesses. And to supplement the ground penetrating radar survey, we also completed a subsurface investigation, which comprised of extracting 60 cores to further refine the ground penetrating radar survey results. In addition to the assessment, we also implemented Stantec's proprietary road matrix pavement management system for the town. As I mentioned, it is Stantec's leading asset management tool, and it focuses on pavements. It provides pavement management plan treatments that are selected based on sound engineering principles to maximize the benefit of that treatment at the minimum cost. As Pat mentioned, it is a comprehensive and powerful tool that will help the town optimize their pavement management needs well into the future. And it's based on the ability to answer 3 fundamental asset management questions. 1, what do I own? 2, what is the current condition? And 3, what do I need to maintain and or improve the condition in the most cost-effective manner? And to do so, the tool uses 4 different elements, maintenance and rehabilitation strategies. So these are treatments that we worked with the town to determine what we wanted to implement in the pavement management system. The decision trees are essentially logic on when and how to apply a certain treatment based on the condition of a pavement. And in order to predict future treatments for pavements, we also have some performance prediction modeling that happens within the road matrix system. And to pull everything together, we also have budget scenarios that we developed in coordination with the town to model different scenarios, whether that's financial constraint scenarios or performance-based scenarios. So this graphic right here is somewhat of a representation of what we are trying to do within the road matrix system. The blue curve represents the service life of a pavement asset. And what we're trying to do is find the areas in red here. At what point is it appropriate to apply a treatment where it would produce the best benefit at the least amount of spending? And the rule of thumb here is spending $1 on preventative treatments up in this area will eliminate or delay $6 to $10 of more costly rehabilitation or reconstruction treatments when the pavement deteriorates past the terminal serviceability level. So investing in preventative maintenance and regular repair will prolong the service life of the pavement and avoid premature and costly reconstruction costs and any service disruptions. In the next section, we'll present the findings of the project. So this slide shows the town of Edson's overall pavement quality index, or I should have defined that on the previous slide. The pavement quality index is an overall condition index for the pavement asset. And the findings in the 2020 assessment indicated that the town's pavement network has a PQI, pavement quality index, of 67. And we compared it against 7 other relatively similar communities in Western Canada. And we found that Edson is on par with the average of the 7 communities that we compared against. This map here shows what we call the present status, essentially the current condition of the pavements. As you can see, the color coding indicates the 5 different levels from very good to very poor. So taking that, we wanted to model and predict where the network would be in different scenarios. The first one that we looked at was what would happen if we did nothing. In 10 years, the PQI, the pavement quality index, would fall to 48, which is quite dramatic. And as you can see on the map, a lot of the road segments turn to poor to very poor. The next scenario that we looked at was based on the town's current funding level of $1.2 million per year. Again, it is producing a reduced level of service over the 10-year period. In this scenario, it drops from 67 in 2020 to 57 in 2030. So a drop of 10 points. The next scenario we looked at is maintaining the current level of service, which is the 67 PQI. And in that scenario, what we wanted to determine is, okay, what is maintaining the current level of service going to cost us over the 10-year period? And that came out to equate to approximately $22 million over the 10-year period. So based on that, there does need to be an increased level of investment on the pavement assets that is currently being funded. So to maintain the current condition of the town's pavement assets at a level of 67 PQI over a 10-year period, Stantec is recommending approximately $22.3 million is needed over that 10-year period. And that would decrease the percentage of deficient road segment lengths from 35 to 27. So some limitations of the assessment and the project that we provided to the town. It does only account for the pavement assets themselves. It does not account for other assets such as bridges, damaged by underground utilities or other factors that are not attributed to the pavement structure itself. Any other roadway assets, there was no cross-asset optimization in building the pavement management asset plan, and any unplanned events such as obviously this one presented in the image here. So the final recommendations, like with any system, data integrity is key to the pavement management system that was implemented for the town. The initial implementation has been completed, and we loaded all the road segment information that was available to us. However, as we know, information does change. So our recommendation for the town is to ensure that they are keeping up with updating their road matrix system, whether that's updating the traffic information, the treatments that are currently implemented in the road matrix pavement management system and their associated costs, and inputting any completed work over the years into their road matrix. That will allow the town to run their own analysis and produce their ongoing maintenance and rehabilitation plans based on any changes that do happen. The main recommendation regarding treatments was that the town should consider implementing additional preventative maintenance treatments, such as microsurfacing or any other treatment that is designed to seal and preserve the pavement structure underneath. It was also recommended that the town consider completing a road network survey once every 3 years. That is a typical time interval in the industry, and is when we notice that pavements can change drastically. So that's an industry standard. And this will ensure that the town does have that accurate condition data to enhance the benefits of their road matrix pavement management system going forward. So moving forward, some things that the town can work on and look to harness the benefits of the road matrix pavement management system. They can look at some historical pavement performance data and create some custom deterioration models to more accurately represent your local conditions. Creating custom decision trees that model other decision logic or treatments that the town may want to consider in the future. As mentioned, maintaining the up-to-date work history, treatment costs, and traffic data is essential to maintaining a pavement management system. And building on that initial implementation by adding additional pavement data that may be available, whether that's for any new road segments or any other data that becomes available. So there is a central repository for pavement management data. They can also budget additional scenarios, whether that's performance-based or financial constraints. And that will lead to more refined and accurate pavement maintenance and rehabilitation analysis. So the investment that the town made in the road matrix system, which is a versatile and powerful tool, it will help the town to further customize and utilize the tool well into the future without the need of a third-party consultant. Of course, Stantec, we will always be there to support you, but these types of analysis can now be done within the town itself. So that's our presentation for today. And if there are any questions, I open up the floor to questions.
All right, any comments or questions?
Troy, we'll have to get rid of that screen so we can see.
Oh. Steve, can you remove the sharing?
I can stop.
There you go. Thank you. Councillor Byer and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Thanks. Through the chair to Carlos, thank you for the presentation. That was fantastic. I was really looking forward to this. I'm not a road person. I just drive on them. I'm a little bit confused. So does maintaining our current level of service based on that 67 number on the pavement quality index, does that mean there's any major rehabilitation happening, or is that just a preventative maintenance to kind of just to keep them at the same level that each street is currently at?
No, it does consider major rehabilitation as well. The road matrix system and the general philosophy in pavements these days is not necessarily worse first, but what is the best bang for our buck? So whether it all depends on the condition of the road and how we've modeled that condition into the future. So it does consider preventative maintenance, but if the requirement is major rehabilitation, then that is accounted for in the plan.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I'm not exactly sure who this would be to, maybe Pat, maybe Mitch. At one time, I thought we'd sort of put off really digging up our roads and going ahead with the former plan we had from our engineer, because we were waiting on having this study done, which would display what the infrastructure was like underneath. Now, I'm not necessarily seeing that this is part of this study. Is that true? There's nothing that we can use to show us what the infrastructure is like, whether it's worth doing the top of the surface or we have to dig down.
I'll take that one.
Thank you.
So through the chair to Councillor Wilkinson, the road assessment from Road Matrix, it's a tool in our toolbox in planning our capital projects. So what it does is it looks at the road information, and it's just the road information. And it says, here's sort of what your program will look like based on this budget. And we look at those things, and it includes a list of maintenance items that would be handled by our operations crew. So I think if you've seen them out and about patching, doing patch repairs and crack replacements or crack fixes on the roads, they're actually going through a list this year from the Road Matrix program. And we're trying to calibrate and see how much work we can get done for budgets and kind of calibrate the cost tool in there, because we didn't have any data on how much those kinds of fixes would cost. When it comes for stuff that's underneath the surface, we've got some existing data that we can look at. And we have to look at the plan for our reconstructions and sort of surface treatments as a whole thing. So we can look at the MSP, the Municipal Servicing Plan from 2017. So in there's a list of planned projects that we are currently keeping as adopted. It also includes some known sewer issues and some known water replacement issues that we're going to have to look at. We've also got some information from operations that says in this area, we've got a couple of hydrants, for example, that need to be replaced. So we might have other issues here that are worth looking at. So when we're planning sort of our roads, we're trying to avoid those deep utilities right now, because it's just allocated for roads so far. But going forward, I'd like to include sort of neighborhood renewals and incorporating some of those deep utility things as part of the discussion. So it's a tool that we can use to help us kind of steer where the best money is for roads. And then when we start looking at the other utilities, we'll look at all of those other pieces of information. So the MSP and our operations data, complaints from the public, and come up with a holistic approach. Does that answer your question?
No, I'm sorry. Through the chair, could I have a follow-up? Anybody on council, do you remember what our reason was why we haven't put the money into road maintenance and we were waiting on some study? I thought it was so that we would know what was underneath. Thank you, Kevin, if you could answer. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sure. So I think based on the change in philosophy is that we were doing all the underground infrastructure work and of course doing the paving afterwards. And as you know, there is huge costs associated with those types of projects. So as you're spending all that money on that underground work, you have less money to spend on resurfacing of roads, right? So I think what Pat was kind of alluding to there is we know certain areas where we can say reline a sewer line and give that asset another 20 to 25 years, because we know pavement doesn't last as long as the underground infrastructure. So as a way to manage finances and to deal with those things, some of those preventative things can be done to extend the life of that underground infrastructure. And then you have more money to do that resurfacing, because as a taxpayer, as a citizen, you don't know what's going on underneath. All you care about is that pothole on your road. So it's trying to find that balance in some of those areas where you can. In other areas, absolutely, you're going to have to redo all the underground infrastructure. We've seen with West Haven Drive last year, some deep construction had to occur in order to deal with some of the underground stuff. And that just means that's less money that we have to do some of those pavement repairs. I don't know, Mr. Ham, if there's anything you want to add to that. But I think that's kind of the philosophy that administration's been using the last number of years.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit. Philosophically, we're unchanged, Councillor Wilkinson. We are still looking at our underground infrastructure as part of our overall attempt to take care of all of our infrastructure deficit. But we still have a lot of work to do in understanding what that is. All of our assessments are from 2016. We want to update those periodically so that we have an opportunity to make the best choices going forward.
Okay, thanks. We did see some good stuff at AUMA or something that will really make those pipes last a long time. We hope. Thank you.
Anyone else for questions? Councillor Chenard.
Hi, through to the chair, to Carlos. I actually have, I don't know if you want to call them questions or comments. I'm actually pleased that your study says that our present, we're spending 1.3 on roads. In order to keep up a standard, we should go to 2.3 million, if I understand you right. There's just a comment. The other question I had for you is, you touched on a 3-year study. Now, what would that cost? Like, it makes sense to me to get some actual professional in. Could you just maybe tell me more information on that, please?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this study that we completed for the town, it can be considered essentially a baseline. Moving forward on the 3-year cycle, the assessment does not need to be nearly as comprehensive. Two of the tasks on this project, the ground penetrating radar and the subsurface investigation, will not be required in the future, as long as the town maintains accurate records of any pavement structure changes within their road matrix system. That's a one-time assessment. Additionally, the road matrix implementation obviously won't be required moving forward either. So really, all you're talking about on a 3-year cycle is that surface distress and roadway profile survey and the falling weight deflectometer testing to ensure that the roads are still structurally adequate for the anticipated traffic loading.
Follow up, Councillor Schneider?
Yes. Would it be unfair to ask you, what would an estimated cost of this study, what would it estimate cost us to have it done? If you don't mind asking, or am I putting you on the spot?
A little bit on the spot, but
Mr. Fisher, do you have an answer?
Yeah, so I would expect that the effort's significantly less than sort of the first round of setup. The first round of setup was about $110,000 is what our budget is. We're sitting a little bit less than that. That included training sessions, the setup of the modeling, analysis of the data, and then all of those things that we wouldn't need to repeat as well, like the ground penetrating radar scan and stuff. So I would expect that it would be significantly less than what we spent this year for that program. I don't know that it's fair to ask Carlos for an exact number, because it would take a bit of effort on his part to give me a number, but I think going forward, I will get that from him and incorporate it into our capital planning document so that you'll see that in our 5-year cycle. Does that make sense?
Excellent, thank you. I think Mayor Zahara had his hand up.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Carlos. And as my other colleagues around the table, very excited to see this information to help us make the decisions moving forward. So a couple, I guess, questions. I see that you did some alleyways, and as at this point, we haven't been doing anything with alleyways. So how much, do you have a breakdown of how much that cost was for the alleyways in particular, outside of our regular road network, as well as what would you recommend for preventative maintenance spend? I know you talk about the $2.3 million, but I think a lot of that has to do with road rehab and reconstruction. But on a preventative side, I know we added $60,000 to our budget this year to do some of that stuff. Do you think that's a good number, or is there a number that you would suggest?
So the cost of the alleyways, that's something we'd have to take a closer look at to split out. But in general, I would say that it probably was not a big factor in the project. There was not that many alleyways. It is about 21 kilometers, but I'd have to get back to you with the number on that. I don't have that in front of me. In terms of the cost for the preventative maintenance versus the rehabilitation, that is all going to depend on the scenario that the town wishes to implement, because we did model 6 different scenarios for the town. In each scenario, the preventative maintenance costs are a good portion of the budget being allocated, because we are trying to maintain the roads, the pavements that are in good and very good condition in the condition that they are in. And in some cases, that means letting some go a little bit further down, just because it is a more cost-effective approach. I can't tell you an exact number because it's going to be different based on every scenario, but I think Pat wants to add to that.
Yeah, you bet. So with...
Can I just interrupt here for a second, Pat? I'm sorry. I appreciate this, Mayor. I really want to have this conversation, but we're drifting way into the weeds for this delegation, and I think that we can put something together for SPS that will define how we're going to go forward with this, and then we can put some budgetary implications against it at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Ham. Any other questions? Councillor Bevan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see your crews are out doing their patching and repairs there, Mr. Fisher. But also I ran into a company out there that was taking pictures of our roadways and everything else. And he had a list of about 9 places they were taken. And he says that's what they're going to put a bid in to repair these roads this year. Is that true or what?
Sort of. That's for our proposals for engineering design on our 2021 capital roads program. I gave them a list of roads and we're based our budgets based on that. We're kicking off and sort of finalizing what would be included in our 2021 program for capital based on the budget spend this week. That proposal closed on Monday, so we'll be moving ahead with that and finalizing that list. So that's separate from the maintenance things. That'll be for the design of the capital program this year.
Follow up, Mr.
Follow up, please. Do you think council would get a list of that roads we were looking at?
Sorry,
Yes.
Councilor Bevan, I'm just out of curiosity, you want a list of the roads that we're doing repairs on?
Well, just a list of the guy, Jimmy, he read out about 9 places in that, and I remember where both of them are in that, but I would just thought it'd be nice for council to also know what, I guess, I kind of know, and I can't remember them all.
We can put something into a weekly report for you for sure.
Councillor Byron.
Thanks. Through the chair to Carlos. So just a question. So we get a lot of people that maybe are upset about the condition of a certain road because of a pothole, or maybe there's rutting or something happening on the surface. When you did the functional assessment compared to the structural assessment, how does the weighting on those affect the criteria that you're using to grade it, whether it's good or fair or poor? How does that change? Because most people, I think, maybe look at the functional assessment rather than the structural, and I'm just curious on how that is determined.
So it depends on the functional classification of the roadway. As an example, on local roads, we put less importance on ride quality because you are traveling at lower speeds. Ride quality is not that impactful. But on arterials and collectors, ride is of a concern. So that would be the main priority would be ride and then surface condition. But we always take into consideration the structural adequacy as equal to everything else, because at the end of the day, the pavement structure needs to be adequate for the traffic that we're putting on it, regardless of its functional condition.
Right, any other questions? I have a couple questions. The mayor's took one of my questions about the percent of budget for preventative maintenance. So I look forward to those answers from administration. But I have a question for Mr. Leal, if I may. If politics were not really a factor, would it make financial or quantitative sense to make a larger contribution on year one using borrowing or debt if necessary, rather than an even effort throughout the years?
I'd have to take a closer look, but the answer is going to be it may not necessarily be year one, but there may be a year where additional funding versus other prior years or future years is beneficial, yes. And that is something that we can model within the road matrix system as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Wilkinson. You're on mute.
I can go on and on. I was negligent in not saying thank you for the report. I really did appreciate that. And really, most of the taxpayers that I interact with, roads are a big, major concern. So thank you for clearing up some of the questions.
You're welcome. Absolutely.
Last chance for any questions or comments. Mayor Zara.
Yes, through to administration, Mr. Hammond, Mr. Fisher. Are you going to find this road matrix program as a huge benefit moving forward as you develop your capital plans? What's the difference going to be now compared to what was done in the past?
Yep, through the chair to Mayor Zahara, I think it's an amazing program. There's lots of information that it spits out. So if I'm looking at a particular road, I can extract the data and it'll show me what's recommended at this point in time. If I were to do something, I can customize the planning for our next 5 years on there and take a look at the projects that are spit out from the report and see what utilities need to be incorporated and help with budgets. Going forward with our calibrations, I think there's a lot of information that'll help us get better budgeting going. So we've built some of our treatments that are in the program already based on last year's capital program and the costs we spent on them. So the more data that we can feed into there, the better data we'll get out for planning perspective. I'm really excited. I normally wouldn't be too excited about a modeling thing, but this is a really powerful tool. So it's user friendly. It gives us maps. We can edit it in-house. If we have any questions, we can just give Carlos a call, and he's been really responsive in helping set it up and run some stuff. So it's an amazing tool to add to our toolbox.
Thank you. Councillor Curry.
I've just been staying quiet. You guys have all asked good questions. I do just one thing to admin, and thank you, Carlos. I think what I found really appreciative for a study was how much you emphasize that we can now do this in-house. That is a nice treat in the municipal world. We're usually told that we need to pay more. So thank you for that. In-house, are we going to, I have my wish list, Mr. Ham. At strategic plan, are we assuming that we're going to see our asset management plan back together with all of this incorporated so we can just have a greater understanding? We haven't looked at it in a bit, and we didn't have this much detail last time we saw it.
Quite honestly, Councillor Curry, that what might be a bit of a large token.
Too big?
But
okay.
But we will make that effort to incorporate this in the AMP and have something for you to provide. The majority, when we spoke about this road matrix last year, we were excited about updating the information in the AMP, and that's part of the process here. We want to continuously update our living document of the AMP as we go along. So, this is just one piece of the puzzle, and it will definitely fill some gaps.
Perfect. Thank you. I look forward to seeing that.
All right, if there's no other questions, we'll thank Mr. Leal and Mr. Fisher, and thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you for the time.
All right, we're moving on to reports from staff. We have an executive office draft SDAB bylaw number 2259.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. So not a lot to add to this report or the bylaw. It's mostly an update to do with some of the changes that the government made in 2019 with respect to training. So just getting that incorporated into our bylaw. Before there was no training required. We mostly just did some in-house internal, and now it is a requirement and done through the municipal government board through the province. They have also made that timeline every 3 years, whereas our term for board members before was every 4 years. So we need to adjust that term to match with the training timeline. Otherwise, it's just a general cleanup, revamp, update to the bylaw. Also just hoping to reappoint the current members right now, as opposed to starting from scratch, just because they have done their training, so they won't have to refresh for another 3 years. And then we can start. We don't have a full, accordance to this bylaw, we wouldn't have a full pool of members. So next year we could attempt to recruit for a few more board members to fill that pool, and then they wouldn't be expiring all at the same time, and we would have more of a balance in our members. So I'm open to any questions or comments. Thank you.
Right. Any questions or concerns? I'll start it off. Just it makes sense to feather in new members in every year or every other year. So I agree. Having them all expire on the same date doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think that's great. Councillor Curry.
Yeah, I was just gonna agree with keeping the appointed right now, just especially the training is a little bit more extensive training than we do for any of our other committees. And there is definitely a cost factor to it. And with an election in October, I don't think it would be financially responsible of us to do any of that training. And we normally wouldn't do any of that anyways outside of our organizational meeting anyways. So I do think it makes sense and totally agree that we should spread it out so we don't end up having to have new people at all times, because it's definitely a committee that needs some history on it because it's a little bit more complicated. And we're very grateful to have Ms. Parsons whenever things come up.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Bevan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On our training here and that, you have to go out of Edson to take the training, and do you, like the other years, was there a test on here you have to pass by 80%, or is it just you just take the training and now you're qualified to sit on this board?
Thank you. So through the chair, yes, right now because of COVID, the training is online. However, the first year or the first time I took the training, it was in person, and there is a test that you have to pass. I can't remember what the passing grade is, if it's 70 or 80, but right now with the members doing the training online, they have up to a week to complete the test, and then they must pass it. And then they can sit on the board.
I know the first time I took it here, we had to get an 80% passing mark, and it was 3 days and that, and it was, they said it's even easier now, but it was brutal back in the days when I first got on council. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, well, thank you, Ms. Parsons, and we'll move on. I think you have everything you need. All right, moving on to information, nothing from infrastructure, corporate services, or community and protective services. Moving on to information items. We have STARS 2020 Town of Edson Impact Report.
Yes, Deputy Mayor, STARS have just sent this to us, asked us to forward it to council for their information, so it's been included for you to read at your leisure.
Okay, thank you. Excellent report. Easy reading, but lots of information. Mayor Zahara.
And interestingly enough, STARS landed here just the other night, unfortunately. So I think it just speaks to the importance of the service to our community.
Councillor Byer.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration. I know several people have used the STARS air ambulance. I'm sure everybody knows someone or a few people. It is of really good interest to the community. Is there any way that we can kind of share the report a little bit with our communications department? Just kind of let people know what we donate and how many times they land in our area, because I think a lot of people know many people who have had their lives saved by this service.
Through the chair, certainly I'll connect with Mr. Bethgy and look at what we can do with it.
I wholeheartedly agree. Anyone else? All right, we'll move on. Thank you very much. And if STARS is listening, thank you very much for an excellent report and continued service to our community. We have no sundry items. Do we have any questions from media or public regarding items from this meeting?
We do have one member of the media here, just no questions.
Thank you. I will ask for, we have a closed session, in-camera meeting session. And can I get a motion to move into in-camera? Councillor Bevan makes that motion. All in favor? All right, I'll see you in the other meeting. Okay, just came out of in-camera. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Byer will make that motion. All not open for debate. All in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone.
Okay. Have a good night.